live on YouTube. And if you're having fun at the bar, hope you can join us because it's St. Patrick's Day as well. May the luck of the Irish be with you and also with your Irish-founded football team. Of course, Omar Khan doesn't need luck. He's that good. And according to a lot of people on Steelers Nation social media, he had a great free agent haul, and the Steelers now have the best roster in the AFC North, except for one small picayune issue, that being the most important position in sports, the quarterback. And there's lots of stuff going on right now with that quarterback position. People are getting frustrated with the Aaron Rodgers waiting game. There's allegedly a Will Howard smokescreen going on, and a lot of interest by the Steelers in using that first-round pick, again, reportedly on Ty Simpson. So we go to Nick, our resident expert, for if he can sort through some of the smog that's already starting to cloud this draft that will be in Pittsburgh.
Man, we get these conflicting reports all the time about people knowing what team was going to do a quarterback. Outside of us knowing Fernando Mendoza is going to be the first overall pick to the Las Vegas Raiders, I don't think we know anything about that. Here's what I think is going to end up happening. I don't think the Steelers are going to take Ty Simpson at 21. That's my first thing. There's too many concerns I have with him, man. He's got hurt so often. The tools are pretty average. He's a strain thrower. He kind of strains when he's pushing the ball down the field. He doesn't have this elite arm. There's not an elite tool to grab onto. And more importantly, I'll tell you this, I don't really think the Will Howard stuff is a smokescreen. I think that they really like him. Now, do they like him enough to just hand him the starting job? I do not think so. What I do think they like him enough to do is say, hey, let's roll the ball out there and let's see what this guy looks like. Let's see how this guy develops over the year, over the offseason. As we get him into the preseason, let's see if this guy takes the leap. I think that they're probably going to draft a quarterback. They hosted Carson Beck for a visit today. He's in town. Miami Hurricanes quarterback. That's a mid-round quarterback, though. That's not a first-round quarterback. This team is not in a position to where they need to reach for a quarterback. They just do not. You do not need to take a quarterback just because you have to get a young quarterback in the hopper. Yes, you need a quarterback at some point, but this is a very bad class, to be quite honest with you, John. This is not a class that has multiple top options. This is not a class to where I even think there's many guys better than Will Howard. I honestly think Will Howard would be like the QB3 of this class. And so, yeah, I think this entire quarterback mania thing, it'll come up. I don't really buy into it as a first-round option. I think Will Howard's going to be a young guy that they bring in. I think they draft a guy on day 3, bring another young guy in there. So they'll have 2 young guys, Mason Rudolph and Aaron Rodgers. That's what I'm expecting.
All right. I love how you just sort through a lot of this smoke, and believe me, there's going to be a lot more smoke between now and when that Roger Goodell convenes the selection meeting underway in Pittsburgh. Rod Woodson, obviously a great Steeler, but more aligned with the Ravens these days, was kind of, poo-pooing the Rodgers thing, the waiting game again, and also kind of hammering the Steelers because, the one thing I like to look at, is each draft, not only who the Steelers pick, but who they leave on the table, after their pick. And he was looking at Jackson Dart, here we were last year, Steelers, a quarterback needy team. And he thinks Dart would have fit the Steelers profile, kind of this kind of put it out there type of guy. Now, what do you make of the Rodgers waiting game? And, again, people looking at Jackson Dart as a guy that the Steelers passed on when they needed a quarterback.
I mean, here's the thing. I think people are going to look at the Jackson Dart thing and they're going to judge it because they passed on him. Just like I think they're going to look at Shedeur Sanders because the Steelers passed on him. The Steelers passed on both those guys last year. So if either of them, even Tyler Shugg, right, even if he becomes something, the Steelers passed on them for Derek Harmon. So you're going to get compared to that the whole time. I still have significant questions about Jackson Dart. I think everyone's hatching counting their eggs before the chickens hatch a little here. A little too early with Jackson Dart. Let's see what he looks like in year 2. I thought there were some rough moments down the stretch that, I think there's promising stuff, but let's wait and see. The one thing, the Aaron Rodgers waiting game thing is it is annoying. If I were the Steelers, would he be my number one option? Probably not. I would have looked at other areas, but I also think they have this feeling. They've talked about Aaron Rodgers so often with us this offseason, and it feels like every time they've talked about him, they're like, we know this guy's going to tell us before the draft. And I think that's all they care about. They want the answer before the NFL draft. I think they're going to get an answer before the NFL draft. I believe that answer is that Aaron Rodgers is going to come back and be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Steelers exceedingly feel confident in that. And if it's not him, then they're going to turn their attention to maybe a Joe Flacco type who can come in, still be a mentor, but will compete for the starting job. He won't be a guy given this starting job. And so, listen, here's where the Steelers are right now. They look at the quarterback room last year, and they said, we don't like this quarterback class enough to take a swing. We're not going to do the Kenny Pickett thing all over again. I think they're looking at this class again and saying, we are not doing the Kenny Pickett thing again. And they feel like Aaron Rodgers for one more year, getting the scheme in with Mike McCarthy, teaching everybody it, getting another year of the mentorship is going to be beneficial. And then I think next year's the year they're going to take the swing at this, whether that is, a serious run at a free agent like, a Sam Darnold or Malik Willis of that vein, or taking a big swing in the NFL draft. I just don't think that it has aligned perfectly with what they're doing. They're showing you what their plan is. They're addressing the skill positions. They're getting wide receiver, corner, safety. They're going to probably reinforce, the defensive line again, although they signed Sebastian Joseph Day to help that out. They'll probably get a guard or two before. They're going to build this whole team out. These are multi-year investments. They signed Michael Pittman to a 3-year deal, Jamel Dean for a 3-year deal. They have made multiple investments all along this team at the skill positions now. The idea is we're going to build the skill positions out, and next year we're going to drop this quarterback in. The trenches are going to be built out, and our skill positions are going to be built out, and this quarterback's going to be in an ideal environment to develop, and that's what the Steelers are trying to do. That's what they're trying to emulate here, and I think that's really the overall plan. And so I think anything kind of outside of those bounds kind of misses what the Steelers are doing. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers coming back makes them Super Bowl contenders. I don't think that really they would have been Super Bowl contenders had they signed Malik Willis or Kyler Murray or whatever, right? So I think the waiting game is just burdensome because it's happening again. But I don't think they're going to wait till June this time. And I don't think they're going to have to. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to give them one before the NFL draft. And I think they're fine kind of deciding what they're going to do after that.
No, that makes perfect sense, Nick. And really, they did have that scenario when they finally got lucky at pick number 11 with Ben Roethlisberger. They had a team constructed that he could come in, and due to an injury, he came in quicker than was the plan, but, had a great rookie season because with the defense they had and the other pieces on the offense, he didn't have to do that much to have a great rookie season. And of course he went on from there with just stellar performance, 2 Super Bowl rings. I hope a first ballot Hall of Famer. So that is the plan. And yeah, they have to love the quarterback. They no more talking yourself into it. They have to fall in love with the guy. I mean, that was a big mistake with Pickett. It set them back, as always. When you take a quarterback in the first round and it doesn't work out, it sets you back. That said, you have been sort of, given everything that they've done in free agency and looking at the draft board and, everything they could do at pick 21, you're still trending wide receiver. Keep building out that wide receiver room that was left deficient the last 2 years. Talk a little bit about that. Is there anything developing in terms of how they see this board falling and who they would like to get at 21?
Yeah, I mean, I think receiver still makes a lot of sense. That room is by no means filled. They still need 2 receivers right now. I mean, they have Michael Pittman, DK Metcalf, Roman Wilson, and Ben Skowronek, and no one else. They need 2 guys or maybe 3 guys in that room. I'd sign another free agent, and I'd probably draft 2 more. This needs to be a position that is not an issue next year. You have to flood this position with resources. I think it was off to a really good start with Michael Pittman because it didn't really cost them that much, right? No. They moved back like 15 spots in the draft to get a legitimate wide receiver 2, 3 type. I know he's not, as athletic as he used to be, but the savvy, the toughness is still there with Michael Pittman. And he's going to be a guy that's going to really help this offense from a chain moving perspective. They need a dynamic receiver. I think that's where we're going here is they need someone that can beat man coverage and can win after the catch. They don't have a guy like that right now. I think you can unlock DK Metcalf as the downfield guy, the deep threat. But what you really need is a guy that, hey, I can throw the ball on a 5-yard dig and he can turn it into a 20-yarder by breaking a tackle or making some moves in the open field. I need a guy that on 32, when I need someone to get open on this route, I can trust them to be the winner of that. And I think that's what they're lacking in this room right now. They're just lacking a true route runner, a true man coverage beater. And so that is the wide receiver I'm starting to look at. Really, Pittman's profile is going to be interesting to see where he kind of fits in now in this offense, because to me, he is no longer, just a strictly outside guy. I think he's going to be a big slot Z type. He's going to be an off the ball guy. He's not going to be an X receiver. That's going to be DK's game. But I think Pittman's, going to probably play more and more in the slot because I think his physicality, his size, and kind of the way he wins over the middle of the field, settling against zones, fits the slot a lot more than maybe it does outside. So that kind of makes me want to have a guy that can play inside or outside, which means, guys to me like Omar Cooper and Casey Concepcion, if they're there at 21, become real options. I know a lot of people will talk about, Tyson and Mekhi Lemon. Do not see them making it to 21. If they do, then obviously I think those are obvious picks for the Steelers. I just don't see a guy like that falling. Maybe Tyson falls due to the medicals. We'll see. But I think, you're likely to have Cooper and Concepcion there than those guys. So those would be the guys I'd look at. I also can see, it's kind of hard not to at least put guard in the differential at this point, right? Some guy that I think you and we're going to be at Penn State Pro Day tomorrow. We're going to see is Venga Ioane, who I think is a guy that's increasingly going to be a popular mock draft pick to the Steelers because he is such a plug-and-play, decade-long starter at left guard. And he is like a BPA pick through and through. I think it's hard to not say he's a top 10 talent in this class. So if he's there at 21, the value you're getting out of that guy, it's like David DeCastro all over again if that happens. It's like, how did this guy fall to you? And so you got him in that differential. I think safety is still a potential looking area. I know you signed Jaquan Brisker and Darnell Savage. Plus, you have Ramsey and Deshaun Elliott, but the youth there needs to be there. So could you maybe draft a Dylan Thieneman or an Emmanuel McNeil Warren? I don't really think they draft corner unless they look at a guy like a slot corner. Avion Terrell out of Clemson can play inside or outside, so maybe that's on the differential. But really, to me, this screams receiver or guard. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Sure, you can have the sleeper picks. Maybe it's safety. Maybe you can get a corner. Maybe there's a Dean Lyman you really love. But to me, this is probably going to be a pick on the offensive side of the ball. And it could interesting to be a skill player, which is where I'm leaning. Or if the value is just too good, I just think you have to run the card of if Venga Ioane is on the board. Like that to me is as slam dunk picks get.
No, that sounds great, and that's the beauty of that 21. There's a lot of options on the table. You mentioned the value proposition with Pittman. It's just incredible, especially if you look at Broncos giving up a first today for Jalen Waddle out of Miami. And the Steelers swapped a 6 and a 7, to get Pittman. That's just incredible value. I've got some activity in the chat. Sebastian Joseph Day, is he going to play the nose? And what's your confidence level?
Yeah, that's a good question from Zach there. Sebastian Joseph Day to me, and I was talking about this yesterday on the radio here in Pittsburgh. I cannot tell you how much I love the Sebastian Joseph Day signing. It is everything the Steelers have needed at defensive line for a long time. A guy that plays nose, 3 tech, 1, 4-eye, 5. He plays out to the 6. He's played everywhere over his career. Sebastian Joseph Day's learned from Aaron Donald, learned from Ndamukong Suh. There is just so much to this background that you love. He's not a great pass rusher, but, man, he's got like 34.5-inch arms, and you cannot block him in the run game. He has been one of the best run-defending interior defensive linemen in football the past 2 or 3 seasons. So having a guy there, if Derek Carmen gets hurt again, you're not going to completely panic. This guy has 90 career starts, John.
Wow.
This is my favorite move of their offseason so far. $5.5 million per year to sign a guy like this. To me, I kind of view him as a potential starting nose tackle for the Steelers. They're going to be in base a lot less than they were under Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin in general, because Patrick Graham is a real sub-package guy. He likes to play out of nickel a lot. So you're not going to get a lot of true base packages. But I could totally see the scenario where you kick Benton off the field, or you rotate that second defensive end spot with Benton and Harmon, and you just throw Sebastian Joseph Day in at nose tackle, and he's the starting in the base packages. And then when you go to nickel, okay, there you go. Keanu Benton, is a pass rushing focused guy. You just don't put Keanu Benton in areas where he is vulnerable as a run defender, because that's not Keanu Benton's game. He is a explosive pass rusher that knifes through, and he plays best as a one tech or a three tech, and that's going to be the sub package game, not as much out of the base stuff that they run where you have a nose and 2 4 eyes. So I totally could see Sebastian Joseph Day being the starting nose tackle in that regard. So to me, this is a guy that opens up so much for what you can do. The D line depth is finally good now. You have him plus Y.A. Black. You have Zeze Otomewo, who showed some flashes there as well as a pass rusher, a kind of a rotational pass rusher. I think they have 6 guys where you can be like, all right, these guys are all rosterable and good depth players. I think you could still add 1 or 2 more pieces to that, sign another depth guy, and then draft someone. I think it would be smart to draft another defensive lineman. But Sebastian Joseph Day is a game changer for them in a lot of respects up front because of what he can do. So he is a dynamic run defender. You're going to allow, Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson to use their athleticism and knife through clean now. They won't have to get off guys anymore. That's how you get TFLs, create chaos and havoc in the run game. Sebastian Joseph Day, yeah, really, really big fan of that move for the Steelers. And I hope I get, that's a meat and potatoes setting, but I hope I get people excited for it because it's going to, I think, help a lot of people around the Steelers organization, Steelers defensive line and linebacker rooms because of what he can do.
Hey, I still like meat and potatoes. I don't know about anybody else, but I'll take that meal any day. And true to their blueprint, they're being true to the trenches, and we're I think we're getting close on both sides of that, both lines on both sides of the ball. Speaking of the line, still question in the comment here about left tackle because Broderick Jones wasn't cutting the mustard even before the injury, and I know we had some able fill-ins when he did get injury. When he did have that injury, but is that something they need to make a move on in the draft, left tackle?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you talk about left tackle, and that is one where, you have Broderick Jones who has the neck injury. How early is he going to be available and ready? I think he's ready for week 1, but how deep into training camp will it take? Is he just ready for the start of camp or not? I do think that the Steelers are still waiting to see that, but I think they're getting more positive updates now. But that's a waiting game to kind of see when he's back. Dylan Cook played extremely well to start in his place. I think that is the one thing. He faced Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson, and then when he went against competition that he should have dominated, guys like the Ravens edge rushers, he did it. Like, he did what he needed to do against guys that weren't these alien pass rushers. And so, man, I think Dylan Cook and, Broderick Jones, even though I do think he was rough last year at times, he did probably have his best year as an NFL player. Like, I think these two guys have at least earned the right to find out what they got. At some point, I think you do need to roll the ball out sometimes for young guys and just be like, let's see what you guys got. Listen, the Steelers, to me, are not a Super Bowl contending team next year. I don't see that. And so I want to figure out what they have. I want to see if Dylan Cook can continue the strong play. I want to see maybe Broderick Jones takes another leap, and he's the answer, right? Maybe he comes into his own. And so there's just so much. There's so many variables there. They have questions at that, but they are not without options, and I think that's notable. And so to me, listen, if the value at 21 is, incredible for a left tackle, sure. Like, if you get a guy like Spencer Fano there who can play tackle or guard, or a guy that is even repped center during the process, okay, do you think about it? Sure. Do you think about a Caleb Lomu maybe? Sure. Like, those two guys are rock solid players, and that you have to at least give a little consideration to. But is it like the highest differential to me for them to take a left tackle in the first round? No, because I think they do at least have two options that I'm intrigued by, that I want to see what they got. And so there's that to that table too. I'd rather get a guard than a tackle, but if it's a guy that can play both, I'm fine with that too. Like a guy like Fano can do both. So I think that is something to think about in the differential later in the draft. Like the second or third round, you have a guy like Jennings Dunker who can play guard or tackle. He's got that beautiful flowing red mullet that everyone loves out of Iowa. I know he's a fan favorite already. People would be excited about that pick, but he can play right tackle or left guard. That's what he's done over his career. So a guy like that makes some sense to me, but I don't really consider left tackle high on my differential for 21, unless you get a scenario where a guy like Fano does fall.
No, well stated. Just a quick question. When do they have to decide on Jones's fifth-year option, and any idea which way that's trending, or is it a wait-and-see scenario?
Yeah, no, they have to decide on that shortly after the draft. It's probably like May 2nd or 1st or something like that. Usually it's like the week after the draft is when you have to decide on that. I really don't think they're going to be I really don't think that they're going to be able to decide on that until they know the medical evaluation that they have of Broderick at that time. Here's what I will say. All things considered, I think if Broderick had clean medicals, they would pick it up, but who knows what this neck injury is going to be like by then. If they have a good answer by then that say, hey, this is not a concern. I mean, listen, this guy had neck fusion surgery. That is significant. That is not, the type of surgery that you just walk off. We've seen guys' career ended over that, and I don't think that's, necessarily what's going to happen with Broderick, but I do think they need a better picture before if they're going to pick it up or not.
We'll wait and see on that. It's interesting because there's a question about a medical issue in the draft. The Steelers have used medical questions about some draft prospects to their advantage, picking up some value picks, seemingly unconcerned about the medicals. So we have a question in the comment about Concepcion's knee scope. Is that going to put off the Steelers?
A preventative knee scope, it was what I was talking about. I've never heard of a preventative knee scope. I'm no medical doctor, but that sounds like agent speak to me. But yeah, I mean, listen, anytime someone comes up with knee scope, I always think of meniscus surgery. And that's usually what that's related to. And meniscus stuff, that can be, a whole hair of issues in the future where, you get into arthritis and different things like that. And it's a whole mess. Probably part of what happened with Max Crosby, when he failed that physical with the Ravens, probably part of it. The meniscus is something that is a tough thing to think about. Concepcion, that's kind of the first medical thing that's on his board. And we've talked with the Steelers in the past. They just, you said it. They do not care about the medicals, it seems, right? Troy Faltanu had a knee issue. Derek Harmon had a shoulder issue coming out. Corey Trice had injury issues. Peyton Wilson didn't have an ACL in his knee, literally. Darnell Washington had a knee issue. What I'm trying to say is I think it's probably unlikely the Steelers really care that much about this medical stuff. As long as they think that you can check out. And even Asante Samuel Jr., I mean, this guy came off neck fusion surgery, and I think a lot of teams probably weren't willing to clear him or sign him last year. The Steelers were like, we'll take it. So there's a lot of different things that all pop up on the medical side of things, but not a huge concern for me about Concepcion's knee scope, considering where the Steelers kind of come down on medicals in general. They don't care much about them. If you fall because of medicals, the Steelers are going to be one of those teams that's going to be willing to snap you up.
Very well stated. And, we talked about the Steelers and the 21 pick, and we know the draft's going to be in Pittsburgh. It's ripe for drama. Do you see any scenario where the Steelers, with its abundance of picks in this draft, tries to trade up? A couple of the commenters are specifically mentioned, and I'm going to butcher the name, Ione? Iwane. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Venga Ioane.
Okay.
And that he's the type of guy. I mean, do you trade up for a guard? It's a tough one to think about. Here's what I will say, and something I've always kind of thought about is I have a hard time seeing the Steelers, and specifically Omar Khan, a guy that does kind of use premium positions and all of this lingo as being a guy that trades up for a non-premium position. So if he were to trade up, it would not be for a guard, in my opinion, but it would be for a wide receiver. So maybe if you can get, Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson or Carnell Tate, I don't think Carnell Tate will, but if one of those three gets in range, I think you could see a trade up there. I think, it'd be a short trade up, though. It'd be like 4 or 5 spots, right? We're not talking about 10 spots. I think in the future, if they're going to make a significant trade up, it would be for a quarterback only. But I think you could see a short trade up. They've done it before. His first year as GM, they literally traded up 3 spots to get Broderick Jones. So it's possible, they could pop up a little bit. I don't think they're going to do it significantly, but I do think it's certainly possible they could. And so I'm not ruling that out at all. They have 12 picks, as we've talked about here today. They have 12 picks. They filled a decent amount of these voids. I think that they want to use a lot of those picks because I feel like they think that youth needs to get infused on this roster. They want to add to these skill position rooms a lot. They want to add young guys. They want to draft for the future, I think, is something. This is a team that is trying to win while also kind of rebuilding, retooling, if you will. And so they're doing a different strategy than most teams will do. So I do think a trade up has to be a very specific circumstance. It has to be a perfect kind of value echelon for them and before that they are going to really consider it. And so, man, I kind of think they're just going to stick at 21. They don't really want to trade out of guys that they love, but generally speaking, they've also been kind of conservative about trading up for guys. And I think that's kind of how Omar Khan feels about it, but we'll see. I think if they get within a short hop up and those guys are there, it's a possibility. I can't rule it out.
Okay.
I think it's much likelier they trade up than trade down. I will say that.
Okay. So either stand pat at 21 or go up. Go up to get somebody.
I don't think they trade back. That's not been a thing the Steelers do. And it's always been described to me by guys in the organization of why would we trade from the guy that we really, really like? So, there's always guys that they really, really like and guys that maybe are a little bit above the guys that they feel like they have, that they will absolutely just take a 21 rather than trading out of that.
Do you think they attack tight end or fullback in the draft with the loss of Connor and Jonnu?
Yeah, I think they kind of have to. It's a depth option now, and this is a ridiculously deep tight end class in terms of like the late day 3 option. And really, I wonder, and we kind of have this comment down here, is it a tight end fullback? I wonder. Now that Connor Hayward's gone, they don't have a fullback on the roster. And Mike McCarthy in the past has used a fullback, guys like Hunter Lipke and John Kuhn. You remember these guys. He's utilized the fullback at times. And certainly, Brian Angelico, the offensive coordinator, is coming from Minnesota where they had C.J. Ham. So I do wonder if the Steelers look to try and maybe get a fullback tight end type. And there's a few of those guys. There's guys like Max Bredesen in this class. Riley Nowakowski from Indiana. He's a really solid player. You can take him in the 6th round. But yeah, I think that they take a tight end. Probably a guy that is just a versatile player that can play a little H-back, that can play a little fullback. That's probably like an underrated need that they need to. But I really think they do need another depth player. They do have J.J. Galbraith, who I think who had a good camp last year, and they're a little intrigued by. But yeah, I mean, like they actually need a tight end. And yeah, Nowakowski is awesome. He is a fun player, tough as nails, great lead blocker. Like if this was the 1990s, he'd be like a 2nd or 3rd round pick because of what he brings to the table. Really fun throwback player. And I believe the last time McCarthy drafted a fullback was Hunter Lipke, who is just a really solid fullback with the Cowboys, and it was much earlier than people thought. They drafted – oh, no, he was undrafted actually, but he made the roster. But that guy was a really solid player and has really carved out a nice role. So I do think the Steelers are probably going to look at the fullback tight end depth kind of as a hybrid guy there, and Nowakowski probably fits that bill the best.
All right, you mentioned early in the show the Penn State Pro Day. PennLive is going to have a bunch of people up there. You'll be there. Who do you think the Steelers will have, and who do you think they'll have their eye on?
Well, they haven't had a ton of people go on the road this year in terms of just sending them out to the pro days. They've been more focused at staying at home, and probably these 30 visits, I think, are going to be more important. And we talked about this, right? The Steelers literally did not send the coaching staff to the combine this year. So the new coaching staff was not there. It was just Mike McCarthy. And we have not seen a position coach on the pro day circuit yet, which I think is a real big change from how Mike Tomlin did it. You know, more and more teams are kind of pulling away from the in-person stuff and more so going to the tape and bring guys in for these visits. And that's been the focus. And so I think we're probably going to see, someone probably decently high up in the tree of the front office, someone like Dan Colbert or something, maybe Mark Sadowski, Sheldon White, someone like that, who's not, Omar Connor, Andy Weidel, but one of their right-hand men. So someone like that probably. And then obviously you're going to see scouts there. Kelvin Fisher is usually here. He's their area scout. Maybe you see Ike Taylor. He comes by sometimes. But the guys I think they're going to have their eye on are two guys. It's going to be Drew Aller. I think they're going to have their eye on them. They're going to do their work on these quarterbacks. Like, they have to. They have to do their due diligence. They have to see how much they like these guys. I think he's going to be someone they keep an eye on, obviously, just to see how his pro day workout goes, how he's recovering from the leg injury. They've shown interest in him before. I think they will continue to show interest in him now. And then you also kind of look at Ioane. That's the other guy. Venga Ioane, to me, that we talked about. I mean, he kind of just fits what they really need in a lot of ways at guard. If he could fall to 21, I think he'd be someone. And the other guy I would think about, other two guys I would think about would be tight end Khalil Dinkins. He's a local Pittsburgh kid. He's from North Allegheny, played up there in Wexford. And he already came to Pittsburgh for a local visit during the first week of that pre-draft visit wave. So I think he's someone to keep an eye on. Then lastly, I think the other guy is Zaki Wheatley, the safety. The Steelers, I think, are going to draft a young safety here in this class. Brisker and Savage are only on one-year deals. Elliott's contract expires after this season. Ramsey is no certain to be back. They need a young safety in that room that they can develop, mentor, and trust that they can step in next year. Wheatley fits a lot of what they like, man. He can play free or strong. He's play a little bit of overhang, so he can be in man-to-man. I would not be surprised if they're really interested in Zaki Wheatley, kind of in that third round range.
All right, great stuff, Nick. When you talked about teams, including the Steelers, not sending people out, to be boots on the ground, I just kind of put two and two together and thinking, hell, they're probably just feeding all this tape and all these stats into AI. I just would love to know, as AI just goes crazy and is everywhere, how much they're relying on AI to do a lot of these draft evaluations. That would be kind of a cool story.
I don't know how much they've relied upon AI. It is something that I know came up with the combine, that scouting circles we're talking about, that AI could streamline some things. Like, I know like the Rams and other teams have utilized it to kind of flesh out their databases. I mean, the Rams and the Jaguars do not send anyone to the combine. They kind of just watch the tape. They write their evaluations, and they kind of work off that. It's something to think about there. The Steelers, I don't know how they kind of do it. I think they're probably relying more on the scouts and their evaluations, and they're probably filtering it. I think if you would utilize AI, it would be to kind of take out the grunt work. And by the grunt work, I don't mean, traveling to areas and watching tape. I think that's a human thing, but I think it's, let's categorize these by this guy. Let's rank this. Like, let's create boards and different scenarios. I think that's where AI would come into it. So, that used to be, a low-level front office guy's work. Now that front office guy, can go on the pro day circuit more so, instead of staying in Pittsburgh and meticulously organizing these databases and different things like that. And so I think that's something to think about there.
Interesting. Hey, speaking of Penn State, go on PennLive, check out our story on the quiet coach, the wrestling coach, Cal Sanderson. He and his team will be going for lucky number 13 in the NCAA championship this weekend in Cleveland. So we got all the coverage and some great deep dives on how he's been doing it, turning that Happy Valley wrestling program into a championship churning machine. It's some good reads on PennLive. And check out Nick tomorrow from Penn State. I think he's going to do a YouTube recap of what he saw up there. And of course, we'll be back here next Tuesday for another edition of your Steelers Breakdown. Until then, go Steelers.